Hey, welcome to the Elle Russ Show. My name is Elle Russ, and I am a #1 best-selling author and master coach. My intention is to inspire, educate, and motivate you with weekly content featuring amazing guests and solo episodes. Visit my website, elleruss.com, to learn more about me, my courses, free masterclasses, partner discounts, and much more. Enjoy the show. Marc Lesser, welcome to the show. How are you?
I am doing great this morning, Elle. It's good to hang out with you.
So you have a lot of really wonderful books, and the titles are also amazing. But your new one that we're going to talk mostly about today, called Finding Clarity: How Compassionate Accountability Builds Vibrant Relationships, Thriving Workplaces, and Meaningful Lives. Now, I know you had a long, winding road to where you are now, being a mindful leadership trainer. Tell us a little bit, give us the cliff notes on how you started and got into this work and ended up, writing books to help people in their daily lives.
Okay, cliff notes. I think I generally like to start with, I was, 19 years old, a student at Rutgers University in New Jersey, and I started getting really passionate about things like humanistic psychology and existentialism, and kind of ran into some books by Alan Watts and Zen practice. And I got called to take some time out of college, 1 year leave of absence, went to San Francisco and walked into the San Francisco Zen Center, and that 1 year leave of absence turned into 10 years. As you might imagine, my parents not thrilled about this. I actually still have the letter that I wrote to them describing why this was the education that I needed, and I think I was right. Actually, looking back, while at the Zen Center, I kept getting asked to take on leadership roles, which I have to say surprised me. And little by little, I began to feel I had this aha that there must be some really important way to integrate this mindfulness practice, meditation practice, awareness with leadership. It just seems so obvious. And my 10th year of living at the Zen Center, I was the director of a place called Tassajara, which is a traditional Zen monastery in the winter, and a conference center, workshop center in the summertime with lots of guests. And it was there that it became more clear that this is what I wanted to do, that I liked. I not only did I like leadership and management, but it seemed, again, a really important opportunity to integrate these two practices that seem so from different fields. But I ended up going right from my 10 years at the Zen Center to getting an MBA degree at New York University. I then started my first company. I started a publishing company called Brush Dance that made calendars, greeting cards, journals. I ran and grew that company for 15 years. And it was time to move on. And a few years after that, I got the call from a Google engineer asking if I would come and help develop some mindfulness and emotional intelligence leadership programs inside of Google headquarters, which was an amazing transition for me, to help develop that program. And also, I got to stand up in front of the room of auditoriums filled with Google engineers teaching meditation, mindfulness, emotional intelligence, leadership, and I fell in love with teaching and doing trainings. And I then ended up starting a company, being CEO of a company that was formed kind of connected to Google, and found myself running a company, teaching around the world, doing executive coaching. And now that's my current role and path. And as you said, I've just written my 5th book, which is called Finding Clarity. And I feel super lucky with the work that I get to do and the people that I'm working with these days.
I think people even listening can hear in your voice. It sounds a little contradictory to like MBA business, like go type A. You don't have that type A vibe. It's an right, but again, that just goes to show you, right, that you can combine the Zen and business, which is also, is that the exact title of another one of your books, the Zen Business, or?
Yeah, actually the first book that I wrote 20 years ago was called ZBA, Zen of Business Administration, which started out as a joke.
Yeah.
I was introduced. I was having lunch, a business lunch, and this CEO who sat down introduced me as having my ZBA degree.
I love it. I mean, that's there needs to be more of that. And as we've gone further over the past 10, 15 years, people understanding, right, the mindfulness apps, the stress in the workplace, our culture here with work, it's not surprising companies have invited you, right? This has become more open. You were onto it sort of before everyone else was.
And it's funny, yeah. And it's funny, Al, when you said, I'll share with you that when you said, yeah, you can tell I'm not this type A person. And I thought, I'm working on it. I mean, not really. I do think that, it's mindful leadership is not about, it's not that we don't need to work with a sense of urgency. It's not that we don't need to get in the fire of doing things, trying things, making things happen, building teams, building companies. But it's interesting, but at the same time, to me, the aspiration is to integrate that with a sense of perspective, a sense of even love and compassion and awareness. And I also openly, people are surprised to say that I think we need to be ambitious, right? I want people who are ambitiously trying to solve real problems. People who are working on things like whether it's climate change or figuring out solutions to gun control or any of those things. Like, man, you should ambitiously work towards solving those real problems, and big and small problems in our lives.
Let's talk about accountability. How do you define it? We would say, all right, well, you're holding yourself responsible for one's actions. Do you have a broader definition? Talk to us about accountability.
Yeah, what I noticed in writing about accountability is that there's often some resistance, and people don't love that word in a certain way. And what I realized that the one of the main parts of accountability is alignment. And I would say both inner alignment. So if holding yourself accountable means having a sense of what matters to you, what's important to you, and again, checking in about how aligned are you in both, your own vision of what you're trying to accomplish as well as how. And then much of accountability is, right, with how we work with other people, and this sense of, again and again, aligning around what does success look like, aligning around how are we working together. And a lot of accountability, I must say, is in how we deal with conflict. How do we work together? How do we handle when we notice that we're not aligned, and we need to have those courageous, those genuine, those difficult conversations in a way that's useful, in a way that brings us together and not brings us further apart. And I think it's just a natural part of human relationships. Again, whether it's with our, especially at work, but it's equally important in our personal relationships, in all the ways where people are So a lot of accountability is noticing the gaps in alignment and being able to skillfully and even compassionately work toward finding greater alignment with each other.
I know you mentioned you're like, accountability. Some people don't like that word, but when I hear it, I think that seems like something we should have pride in, right? The ability to fall on one's sword or admit a mistake. And that would be a characteristic of someone who is truly confident, because failure is feedback versus blame oneself. So, You know what I mean? It'd be interesting for people out there listening to sort of shift your vibe on that word if it was a negative connotation to you, to maybe take pride in being someone who holds themselves accountable. Does that make sense?
Totally. I totally agree with you. Yeah, I think it means I think where it gets a little sticky is that often when people hear the word accountability, there can be slip in there subtle or not so subtle sense of blame, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this is, I think, one of the real core skills, competencies is accountability without, without blame, right? So and again, that's not so easy because I think we humans, we are, part of our keeping ourselves safe and secure, and like in a way we're wired to stay safe, we're wired to stay alive, and as soon as there's some sense that someone has done something that is out of alignment with what we expect, it's easy, we go right to blame, and it can be even unconscious. We don't even know it. That's, we can't be the one who's wrong. We can't be the one who made a mistake. So it's like, as you were saying, it takes a certain level of confidence and self-awareness to feel like, okay, so I'm hurt here, or there's some lack of alignment. Let's figure this out. Let's find a way to unpack and understand what went off the rails here without blame.
Let's talk a little bit about, you talk about how clarity demands empathy for others. Just right there, what do you mean by that? Clarity, empathy. How are those connected? Is that, do you mean having empathy in when someone's confused, you're speaking with them, they need clarity, or you need to be clear? Give us a rundown on that. Because when I read that, I was like, okay, what do you mean?
Yeah, so empathy, it's interesting, all of the studies about the importance of the role of empathy in leadership, and that interesting studies show that the more responsibility, the more people move up in leadership roles, there's usually a reduction of empathy. And empathy really is simply being aware, feeling the feelings of other people, right? So like being able to stand in someone else's shoes. Part of empathy too is not taking, it doesn't mean we take on their feelings. That would be, contagion, emotional contagion. So it's not that, but it is being able to see from other perspectives and feel from other perspectives. So I think that's part of having a more clean, clear, productive relationship is for being able to do that, being willing to do that. Again, it's like the opposite of blame. It's like the opposite of having gaps between us. It's developing that sense of understanding and compassion. And compassion includes empathy. And compassion is like going a step further, which is the intention, the aspiration, or the action to actually want to help and want to heal. So it's not just to feel someone's feelings, but taking it even further toward, wanting to actually help.
I am someone who rarely avoids conflict. Okay. I mean, I don't start it, I'm not looking for it. But I am not adverse at all. I am a person who would rather face it than avoid it. And you talk about facing rather than avoiding conflict for long-term benefit at all. Let's talk about that. People out there, whether it's a lack of confidence, self-esteem, whether it's being a people pleaser, these are people that shy away from conflict, feel it's better to just walk away than address it. You and I both know this can breed resentments and other things going on in that person that are not healthy for them, and maybe probably not for the situation at hand. So let's talk a little bit about that, and maybe on an encouraging level for the people out there that have a fear of facing conflict. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, I think, Elle, that you are very much in the minority. And I also get the sense that not only do you not avoid conflict, but that you also don't. Oh, there are people who overdo it, right? Who are not who
Like
don't
choose
avoid.
your battles wisely is my motto. It's like
Okay, good,
sometimes you
good.
just don't, it's like you're compelled to get involved and then you have to go, hold on, let's assess. No, this is not the right moment. So if anything, I have to probably hold myself back. I have that sort of like Enneagram 8 personality, I think, which is with like I have an underdog thing if I see injustices. But then the problem with that is you're jumping into other people's conflicts, like strangers on a bus or something. And you're like, what am I doing? I'm getting myself killed here. So if anything, I feel I have to, I choose the battles wisely. I
Right.
try to do my best there. But yeah, sorry, go
Yeah.
ahead.
Yeah. No, it's interesting that that awareness of your, uh, you brought up the Enneagram, and I think the Enneagram is based on that. We all have these mistaken beliefs or erroneous beliefs, and this is where it's so interesting. So like you're describing yourself a bit as an Enneagram 8 who who thinks, the mistaken belief of a Enneagram 8 is thinking that the world is unjust, right? And that your role in life
Yeah,
is
that's
that
my role. I'm a
yeah,
part of, yeah, which
and
is like,
and
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 it's
and
dangerous.
and,
Yeah.
and that can be really, really positive. It's one of the things I
Yes.
like about the Enneagram system is that, right, that's not a bad thing, right? But it can be if you're overdoing it, right? If you're
Right.
as you were saying, as you're getting into the business that you shouldn't be in, then it can become, less healthy. I have the opposite. I'm an Enneagram 9 in that. So it's almost the 9 is someone who has the mistaken belief about needing to seek comfort, right? In order
Mm.
to be, and it's all about, in some way, uh, our personalities and our erroneous beliefs are usually what we need to do in order to be identities about what identities we need to take on in order to be more loved, in order to be more accepted. Uh, and this is where it gets really interesting in terms of how our habits and patterns and proclivities toward how we work with conflict and understand. And I think it starts a great starting place is just noticing our own patterns, noticing, where are we, where and how do we avoid conflict? How might it serve us if we were a little bit more aware, a little bit more courageous, a little bit more leaning in to, are there some difficult conversations that would really help? There's a sub chapter in my book called "The Four Most Important Words," and those words are, how are we doing,
Mm.
right? And this, I'm often amazed in the work that I do, the consulting work that I do with CEOs and in business, about how people don't have that, like those how are we doing conversations. How are we aligned in what success looks like? Is it feeling good working together? What could we do to make it feel better? What's working and what's not working? It's so
Which is
interesting.
solving problems before they arise.
That's right, that's
It's
right, it's not
inviting, it's
avoiding.
inviting the opportunity to go, hey, before stuff breaks apart, how are we doing here?
Exactly, exactly. Yeah. And to make that, to be willing, it's such a healthy way to be together. I I sometimes when I walk into organizations, small, medium, or large size organizations, I often feel like it's like a fish tank where the water is dirty and nobody's noticing because everyone gets used to the dirty water. Everyone gets used to not having those genuine those conversations around accountability, and things can get kind of murky without, and there needs to be that willingness to, okay, let's have some real conversations, and that happens in marriages and families as well, where we stop having those real conversations because we're afraid. I think part of it is we're afraid if we bring up what's not working, it will make it worse.
Right.
And then without even realizing it, it does get worse because we're not talking about
Avoiding
it.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and it just those little things that you go, well, I'll let it go, but then you really don't. Like those things just build resentments that then just are so toxic to any
Yes.
relationship.
Yeah.
I'd love to ask you. So for the people listening out there, let's say there is a communication breakdown of some kind. Okay. Someone's not, people are misunderstanding each other. They're going round and round, whether it's business or personal. What are some things that the person who recognizes it out of the two or through whoever's in the conversation, who's feeling the vibe like, oh, it's not going in the right direction, this is bad. What are some ways to sort of stop and reset situations like that? What are some things that can be said to tone it down, to get it back to love, you know what I mean? To have, give us some tips there.
Yeah. Well, a few things that I thought of, and maybe this is a little bit, before even getting there, I was thinking of a rule that I like to have in my work environment is a no festering rule. Right. So anytime you're feeling like, you feel an ouch, or you're feeling like, what was that? Or you're noticing some sense of whether it's mild discomfort or anger somewhere in there, to not just let it fester, be willing to talk about it. So I think that's the first step, is to notice what you're feeling, and then to not underreact or overreact, right? So you don't have to lash out with blame, but you also don't have to avoid. So there's a few really great, I think, tips and tricks. One of my favorites is, so someone says something or does something, you're in a meeting, and you're a little surprised that someone at that meeting said something that you wondered, did they just put you down? Were they just kind of not recognizing what you had done, or some form of an ouch. Mm-hmm. And then maybe after the meeting, you can say, let's talk. And a good way to start a conversation, again, this isn't for every conversation, but for some, you can start with, the story that I'm telling myself is, at that meeting, you were putting me down. Mm-hmm. And I felt put down, and what was happening there? And so taking some responsibility as opposed to going right to blame. So that
right. And I want to point that out. I want to highlight, because you're the way you approached it was, hey, I'm feeling something here, versus saying you did that. You put me down. It's such a different vibe of approach, right? It's like, hey, this is what I'm feeling. Could be wrong. I'd love to hear your opinion. That is such a better way to approach that.
Yes. Again, it's not, this doesn't, sometimes people do, people actually, this isn't a remedy for all cases, but it's really a great tool to have in your toolbox. The story, to be able to start, it allows you to, as you're saying, you are taking a certain sense of, you're holding yourself accountable for your own feelings and not blaming. So another great trick and tip is what I call the noticing the distinction between impact and intention. So again, using the same example, right? So it's a meeting, something is happening, you feel put down, you feel not seen, or you feel hurt, maybe even feel attacked in some way. Subtly or not so subtly. So that the impact is what you're feeling, right? That someone did something, says something, even looks at you in a certain way. You notice the impact of what they did is what you're feeling. We humans tend to go right to thinking we know what their intention is. And this is where things can get wonky, right? We immediately think, it's some form of protection, some form of blame. So instead of going right to blame or thinking that we know what their intention was, to parse those apart and to be curious about, I felt hurt. I felt put down. I felt not seen. I'm really curious, what was your intention? This is actually the first chapter of my book is called Be Curious, Not Furious. And this is an example, I think, of that kind of a practice.
I find that I've learned over time that prefacing conversations or prefacing things helps with communication for me. So, for example, I'm a very direct communicator. So sometimes if I'm too direct and I have to gauge audiences, right, I might have to preface or lighten up or dress something up if I'm not talking to another direct communicator. I've learned that, right? Because someone will take something in a way that it's not meant to be just because I'm very direct to the point. And I found that with other direct communicators, I don't need to do that. So I found that. And then the other thing too is that, I have a degree in philosophy. I like to pan the camera out. I'm a big picture person. And I like to analyze all the angles of something. But what I find is that people will misinterpret some questions. So I will preface and say something like, oh, hey, I want to truly understand what you're talking about. So I'm going to ask a few clarifying questions versus just going into the questions. And then they think I'm going in a direction I'm not. This has happened so many times. I've had to preface so many things where I'll be like, hey, look, I'm going to start to tell you a story. It's not where you think it's going. Hang in with me because I got a point where they're, because they're going in a wrong direction. So I find that I have to do a lot of prefacing, but it helps in these scenarios. You know what I mean? Because I've learned about my personality and my curious, inquisitive nature that people don't necessarily know where those questions are going. So I kind of have to tell them first, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, totally. We humans are amazing storytellers, right? We turn our thoughts, feelings, emotions. We fill in the, as you're kind of what I hear you saying is you notice how quickly and easily people fill in the blanks with their own stories, their own assumptions. And again, we can't help that. And it's not that we're brilliant in how we do that, but it can get us in trouble in relationships when we're again, this is that beautiful practice. I think of it, the practice of aligning, in being careful and curious about, are our stories aligned or are they not aligned? And it's, having differences, having different stories, having different ideas can be really important and useful. And, this is in a way, the brilliance of groups or teams or meetings is that we all bring our own particular proclivities and strengths and stories, and being willing to be able to stretch ourselves, to be able to be to see how other people have different stories, we all process information differently. We all process our own how we work with feelings and emotions, and it takes, but it's all about, whether you call it self-awareness practice or mindfulness practice, to be able to, again, not get caught. Often we get caught by our own stories. We get caught by thinking that either that we're right or that someone isn't quite acknowledging us or the stories that we're telling ourselves.
You talk about learning to listen and lead in ways that align with one's mission and values. And that sounds basic and like everyone will go, okay, that makes sense. But can you break that down for us and see how a person might be aware or identify that they're out of alignment with that?
Yeah.
I guess it'd be one thing if you have a health company, you're trying to help people, but then you're poisoning rivers. Okay, that's a conflict. Right? That's a very obvious one. But
yeah,
let's get into a few of those, maybe some examples there where that might come up.
Yeah, I think of a woman executive that I started working with who didn't feel happy and engaged in her work. Right, she's kind of a fairly high level leader, feeling not engaged, not so happy. So what is that about? Well, it had to do with her relationship with in this case with the CEO of the company. She wasn't feeling quite seen, or she wasn't feeling valued. It's like, well, maybe you need to have some difficult conversations with this person. So she was already kind of ready to start, looking for another job, like ready, like I'm not happy in my work. And there was a subtle form, I think, of lack of accountability, of lack of curiosity, of not asking the question, what can I do to make my work more engaging? What can I do? What actions can I take? What conversations can I take to better love my work? Like, I think that's a core underlying value that I think most of us should at least aspire to, is I want to be able, we spend so much of our time working. What can I do to love it? What can I do so that it is much more aligned and satisfying with what's important to me and what is important to me. And one of the things here, right, what's important to me is to be valued by the people I work with. You know, in what ways, where, in what ways isn't that happening? What actions and conversations might I step into to align and better make that happen with my coworkers, with the people who report to me, with the people who I'm reporting to. Let's make it frothy. Let's make it exciting, as opposed to, again, there's this. It's as soon as there's a lack of alignment, it's easy to check out, and then as soon as we start to check out, that path does not lead to a good place.
Yeah. I'd love to hear some examples throughout your life, whether it's you personally or whether you were present for moments or coaching where, there was a communication breakdown or someone had to have a difficult conversation, and maybe how that went, or the approach is something where we can go, oh yeah, okay, that was a good move. You know what I mean? Something like that.
Yeah. I mean, I think of one very potent example for me. I mentioned when I was introducing myself that I started a publishing company that made greeting cards and calendars and things, and I ran that company for many, many years. But I distinctly remember for myself walking into my office one day, and there was a voice in my head that said, I think my heart isn't here anymore. And it's like I immediately I wanted to suppress that thought. Like, man, what? This is my company. That
Right.
would
You're
mean,
like, I didn't start all this for nothing. I'm not.
yeah, that would mean change. That would mean making it like, and then it was shortly after that a woman who was a mentor for me, and also she was an investor in the company. She took me out to breakfast and looked me in the eye and said, "Mark, I think it's time for you to leave this company." And
That's a difficult conversation.
It was difficult, and I immediately went to thinking, oh, she thinks I'm not the right leader, or blah. She said, no, this company is way too small for you. You need to be doing something bigger than running this little publishing company. And I looked at her and said, like what? And she said, well, that you're going to have to figure out. And I did end up transitioning out of that company. And it was not too long after that where I got the call from Google saying, we want you to come help develop mindfulness programs here in Google. And it's like, oh, that was, I needed to let go. And it was not easy for me to let go of that company. Was my baby. But it was interesting how all these kind of creating that space, other doors open for me in my life that wouldn't have had I held on. And I did want to, it was hard. It's hard to make those kinds of, those changes. So that's a story. That's
Well,
a
and that's
story.
being so attached to something, right? Like,
Yeah.
I've had that happen in my life. You declare yourself as something, you pursue it, you're going, but then something else comes up and you veer over there. And there's a moment of like a breakup between you and your former attachment to a path, right?
That's right.
And that's a weird moment. And this happens too in scenarios like I'm in the paleo primal health world. We have people who like were proselytizing vegans that, had to start eating animal products for health or whatever it is. And like, that's a really horrible, tough moment for them. They've been proselytizing veganism for 20 years. And now they've got, like these moments are tough when you have to detach from a former desire goal. And then there's the ego that pops in where they feel like, well, what will everyone think? I told everyone I was going here and now I'm switching, and all that stuff.
Right. That's the identity issues, right? So I had become identified. I'm the CEO of this company, and it's my baby, and we're doing and it's like, and those are powerful. Those, and as you're saying, those, whether it's the kind of diet or the where we live, who we're with, all and there's a lot of power in recognizing and understanding and not getting too overly attached to some of those identity issues. And I think that's one of the things that makes dealing with conflict and having those conversations hard, is our own attachment to certain, I'm a good person. What do you mean I'm going to bring up this issue that is around conflict, or where I'm afraid this other person might not feel so good with me bringing this up. So, and there's those underlying strong sense of how we see ourselves.
I love also just the idea of so many stories in life with friends and people where now she knew you well enough to say, hey, look, I don't think this is for you. But I love that when, I mean, that is, first of all, that's a difficult thing for her to go, hey, but she spotted it. She felt comfortable with you enough to say it. And like, I love those people, right? Sometimes you need someone to go, hey, what about that? And it's not to dampen someone's dreams to go, I don't think you're really, you don't sound like Celine Dion. You shouldn't be a singer. I mean, let's not downer everyone's dreams, right? I'm not about that. But
Yeah.
that is very interesting. There's so many experiences in life where I just a quick one, but it's a minor but funny one. Back in the day, I applied to law school with my friend out of college, and this was, pre like computer submissions, right? You had to like physically send in the application, and he decided to make his, they just want a straight up application. And he decided to make his whole application a marketing brochure for himself. It was like a professional brochure. He went to the Kinko's. It had like graphs. And I mean, it was hilarious, right? He submitted it, and the people from the law school called him and they go, hey, we got your submission, but we just want to say, first of all, it's amazing. Second of all, you need to go in marketing. Maybe law is not for you. Now, he didn't get into the school, but I love that they made that call. Turns out he is the CEO of marketing to this day. His whole life has been marketing. It is his thing.
Yeah.
But it's just so interesting. Sometimes a stranger or someone out there can see something that you aren't seeing.
Yeah, no, totally. And I think one of the most potent things is, especially when those people actually they see, not only do they see something we're not seeing, but they want the best for us, right? That's a beautiful thing in relationship, right? People who want the best for us, and that it would solve so many problems in the work world if there was a shift toward people actually working in a way where we want the best for each other, right? It allows for so much more risk and genuineness and connection. Again, even when it's hard. Yeah, I to this day, this was a conversation. This mentor of mine, right, saying that it was time for me to make a change, and that she saw that was a beautiful thing.
Yeah, I mean, I had my mentor of 10 years, a few years into it, I was having a conversation with him. And he goes, hey, Elle, when are you going to monetize yourself? What are you doing? And I mean, I was just like, wait, what? Like, he's like, you can't, you can do this for so long. You do that for like, what are you going to do? And I was like, oh my gosh, but it lit the fire that made me go bigger. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And appreciate that. So in closing up, so we'll put everything to connect with you in the show notes, but everybody just listening, you can go to marclesser.net, and that's MarcLesser.net, where you can find his book, Finding Clarity, and his other books. Tell us how we can benefit more from you, whether it's coaching. I know you do executive coaching as well, programs you offer. How can we benefit more from your wisdom?
Yeah, executive coaching has become my primary activity, working with CEOs and leaders. And I particularly like to work with people who want to live a more integrated life. And I also love doing trainings. I've been doing compassionate accountability trainings. My previous book was called 7 Practices of a Mindful Leader, Lessons from Google and the Zen Monastery Kitchen. So yeah, those are, I feel really lucky that I can get to make these kinds of offerings, and I really do. I think there's no shortage of suffering in the workplace, and I want to help make the shift from help people shift from a sense of lack and suffering to helping people to feel more satisfied and a sense of love for their work, bringing together these mindfulness, meditation, awareness, and great ambition for getting stuff done.
I love it. Well, thank you so much. Is there anything else you'd like to leave with our audience as we close out the conversation?
Oh, I'll leave with one of my, because I ran a greeting card company, I'm a professional collector. Quote collector. One of my favorite quotes, Wendell Berry, a 5th generation farmer, said, "Be joyful, though you've considered all the facts." Be joyful, though you've considered all the facts. And I think it's great. Great quote for these days, especially.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for joining us. And for everyone else, we'll see you next week.
Thank you, Elle.
Hey, listeners. Over the years, a ton of companies have approached me to collaborate, but I will only promote companies whose products I believe in and that I actually use and consume on a regular basis. So let me tell you about some of my favorite companies that I can offer you discounts for. Rep Provisions, an amazing company doing incredible things for our planet, topsoil, and animals with regenerative agriculture, and it's my #1 source for quality pasture-raised meat and chicken. Visit repprovisions.com and use code L15 for 15% off. I'm also obsessed with a company called Carnivore Crisps. They make a lean, all-natural, and delicious alternative to conventional snacking, made with just real meat and real salt. Totally addictive, and my favorite ones are the beef brisket and the ribeye. Visit carnivorecrisps.com and use code PALEO10 for 10% off. I also love and regularly use Paleo Valley products. They make amazing supplements and delicious paleo products. I use the superfood greens powder, grass-fed beef sticks, the organ complex, and their bone broth bars. I love the lemon and apple. I also use their essential C complex and more. Visit paleovalley.com/promos/Elle Russ for 15% off. I also love Primal Kitchen. They make delicious paleo-approved, gluten-free, grain-free, soy-free, and no refined sugar products. And I use them daily, from their collagen powders and sauces and marinades to their avocado and olive oil. So good, so healthy. Visit primalkitchen.com and use code L10 for 10% off. I also love paleo powder and use it almost on everything I cook. They make incredible seasoning blends, and they also have these incredible grain-free coatings that feel just like crispy breadings that you would have had prior to knowing that there's another way. So visit paleopowder.com and use code L15 for 15% off.